OCD can be a confusing and difficult to understand condition, characterized by seemingly strange obsessive thoughts and bizarre rituals or compulsive behaviors. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 8 common subtypes of OCD. Hi everyone. You've probably heard of OCD and some of the ways that it can present itself in different people. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about different types of OCD. Some of these you may have heard of, and some that might surprise you. But before we get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those things out of the way, let's start talking about obsessive-compulsive disorder. Now, OCD is a condition associated with upsetting, intrusive thoughts, images, or urges that cause a person extreme distress and causes a person to experience a lot of anxiety, which they then try to neutralize or eliminate by engaging in compulsive behaviors, which just tends to make the whole situation worse. Now, I've done some videos on understanding how OCD works and why it happens, so you may want to check out some of those videos if you're interested in learning more about OCD. Now, the thing with OCD is that it can present differently in different people, and it can present in a lot of different ways, even though the underlying process, even though the underlying mechanism behind OCD is the same. So what we're going to be talking about in today's video are 8 of the most common subtypes of OCD to give you a sense of the variety and the different forms that OCD can present with. So the first subtype I'm going to be talking about is contamination OCD, which is one of the most common forms of OCD that people often think about. Now, at the core of this form of OCD is a fear of getting sick or infecting or contaminating someone a person cares about. So the obsessions in contamination OCD are things like I've contracted AIDS or some sort of disease from a public bathroom. I didn't wash my hands well enough after handling the chicken, and now I'm going to make my children sick. Those types of contamination, fear of I've been contaminated or I'm going to contaminate someone else. And so in response to these fears, what people will do is they'll engage in compulsions, things like repeatedly washing their hands or sanitizing things around the home, avoiding public restrooms or doctor's offices, avoiding being around children just in case I contaminate the children. So that's contamination OCD, really, again, that form of OCD that focuses on germs and contamination either to myself or to other people. Now, second subtype of OCD is harm OCD. And at the core of harm OCD is disturbing or violent thoughts, images, or impulses of harm coming to myself or harm coming or me inflicting harm on other people. So examples, things like stabbing my wife while she sleeps or throwing my child down the stairs, the thought of having hit somebody with my car. And so some of the common compulsions you see in harm OCD are things like hiding all of the knives in the house, not allowing myself to be alone with my child, going back repeatedly to check if I hit somebody when I was driving. Another subtype of OCD is pedophilia OCD, and this is characterized by thoughts of sexual acts with children. Now, this form of OCD is especially prone to stigma, and people often have a lot of shame about this type of OCD because of how strongly people feel about pedophilia. Now, the key thing to understand is that these thoughts are not desires. They're distressing and disturbing. It's not that the person actually is interested in children. They're mortified by the fact that they have these thoughts about children. So some of the common obsessions are things like, what if I have sexual thoughts about my child? Or I had a sexual thought when I was near my niece. What does that mean? What if I molested my child while I was changing their diaper and didn't even realize it? And so some of the compulsions would include things like researching pedophiles to find information about pedophilia as a way of convincing myself that I'm not a pedophile. Staying away from my niece, or refusing to change the baby's diaper unless somebody else is in the room with me in order to ensure that I don't do anything. Another subtype of OCD is sexual orientation OCD. And this involves obsessions around my sexuality. Like the fear that I may be in denial of my true sexual orientation, or a fear that my sexual orientation could abruptly change. So some of the obsessions in this type of OCD are things like, I looked at that guy back there a little too long. Maybe that means I'm gay. Well, how do I know if I'm actually straight? Am I really into my girlfriend, or am I more into other guys? One of the funny examples of this type of obsession was in the show Seinfeld years ago. There was an episode in which the character George is having a massage from a male masseuse. And midway through the massage, you see the look on his face change, and he looks a bit shocked. And so later in the episode, he's talking to Jerry, and he says, I think it moved. And he's sort of questioning what does it mean that he was aroused, or could have been aroused, while this male masseuse was massaging him. That's kind of the idea of these types of obsessions. So common compulsions in this form of OCD is often checking to see if I'm attracted to women by looking at them, or looking at pictures of women and seeing, okay, do I find them attractive? Am I turned on by looking at these women? Could be seeking reassurance from friends. Do I seem straight? Like I'm not getting off a gay vibe, am I? I may avoid people of the same sex entirely to avoid the temptation of looking at them. So these compulsions are designed to neutralize those concerns or those fears that I might have about my sexual orientation. A fifth subtype of OCD is relationship OCD, or sometimes referred to as relationship substantiation OCD. And the idea behind this is I'm questioning if this is the right relationship for me, if I'm actually in love with my partner, or if there's someone else I should be with. Now, the key is this isn't about relationships in which there are significant problems or lots of arguments and I'm doubting whether or not we should be in this relationship together. It's more, we seem perfectly happy, but I'm questioning whether or not I actually am happy. So some of the obsessions are things like, are we supposed to be together? What if we get married, but we're not meant to get married? We're not meant to be together for the rest of our lives. How do I know if I'm actually attracted to my partner? Is there someone out there who's better for me than this person? So some of the compulsions may include things like looking at pictures of my partner to see if I'm actually attracted to her, and to remind myself, oh, am I attracted to her? Reviewing times that we've had together and questioning, was I actually enjoying myself during those times, or was I faking it? Another thing that people often do is take those relationship quizzes online to see, is this the right person for me, or is this the right relationship for me? And so it's constantly seeking that reassurance that this is the proper relationship to be in. Another type of OCD is religious OCD, sometimes referred to as scrupulosity. And so it really sort of centers around things like, have I violated moral or ethical beliefs or religious norms? So some of the obsessions can include things like thoughts of blasphemy or swearing at God, picturing myself being naked in church, questioning, did I really mean that prayer when I said it? Am I misleading God in the way I'm praying? Or it could be, did I mislead that other person when I told them that thing? Was I unintentional? Was I unintentionally lying to them? Maybe I was trying to lie to them, but I didn't even realize it. So some of the compulsions in this type of OCD are things like repeating prayers over and over again in a certain way, seeking confession from religious leaders repeatedly, checking with people over and over again to ensure that they didn't misunderstand what I said. And so, again, seeking reassurance that I didn't lie to them. Another subtype of OCD is what's called just right or symmetry OCD. So, in this type of OCD, it's hard to identify that there's a specific fear, but it's more a feeling that something isn't right, or that something isn't right, or that things aren't organized in a certain way. So, this isn't a preference, but it's more about anxiety and discomfort when things are not organized or don't feel right. So, some of the obsessions in this type of symmetry or just right OCD are things like, I need to start the sentence over again because it didn't feel right when I was saying it. The books, they're not organized in a proper way on that shelf, so I need to reorganize them until it feels right that they're organized in the right way. Or it didn't feel right when I got up from that chair, so I feel uncomfortable about that not right feeling. So the compulsions in this type of OCD are things like repeating the actions over and over again. So I'll, if it didn't feel right when I got up, I'll sit back down and get up again until it feels just right. I'll rearrange and order things repeatedly in order to have them in a symmetrical way that feels right. I'll have to tap on a desk a certain number of times before I can move on to my next task. And the final subtype of OCD I want to talk about is pure obsessional OCD, or sometimes referred to as pure O. Now, in this form of OCD, the person has obsessions without sort of external apparent compulsive behaviors. So this can include any of the obsessions, any of the obsession topics I've already discussed. So things like sex, sexuality, religion, harm, relationships, symmetry, order, all of those different types of OCD can be just pure obsessional OCD as well. So examples of obsessions, things like an image of pushing someone in front of a bus, or having a blasphemous thought about God, picturing myself with another person when I'm kissing my partner. And so in this type of OCD, there are compulsions, but they usually involve mental rituals that aren't apparent on the outside. So things like compulsively telling myself that I'm not a violent person, and that I would never push someone in front of a bus. Repeatedly reminding myself that God is forgiving and that He's not upset with me. Repeatedly telling myself 5 times in a certain way that I love my partner whenever I have the thought of another person. So this pure OCD may seem like it's just obsessions, but there's usually some mental compulsions that are taking place. So the thing that tends to differentiate pure obsessional OCD from other forms of OCD is that there aren't any of those apparent external compulsions or compulsive behaviors that people will engage in. So those are different types of OCD. I think it's important to note that people can have more than one subtype of OCD at a time, or they can have a mix of subtypes in their obsessions. So I can have an obsession, for example, of sexually assaulting the Virgin Mary in church while I'm swearing at God. So that combines harm, sexual, and blasphemy obsessions all in one. And another thing to point out is that these subtypes can change over time. So it's not that a person just has one subtype of OCD and that's how their OCD is forever. This can evolve and it can change, and people can move from subtype to subtype. That's why it's so important to understand how OCD works and how OCD treatment works. Because the principles of the underlying mechanism of OCD and how we go about teaching people how to manage OCD, those principles apply no matter what subtypes of OCD a person might be experiencing. So it really is about understanding the mechanism, and no matter what type or what subtype of OCD a person has, we tend to approach it and tend to approach treatment and management of it in the same way. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that gives you a better sense of some of the different types of OCD and some of the different ways that OCD can present itself in a person. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas about this, or if you have any questions, please leave me some comments in the comments section down below. If you've been enjoying my videos and would like to see more, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll be alerted every week when I post a new video. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.